That's my son.
Where all the judges are at, of course. Right. Bradley. Rebecca Bradley.
All right, thank you all for coming today. My name is Anand Swaminathan. I'm with my colleague David Owens. We represent the family of Tony Robinson. On March 6, 2015, almost 2 years ago, Tony Robinson was shot and killed by Officer Matt Kenny of the Madison Police Department. Tony Robinson was unarmed. Tony Robinson was a 19-year-old boy. He graduated a semester early from high school. He, on the Monday after his death, was going to go with his grandmother to enroll in college. He's somebody who had big dreams. He had a full life ahead of him. Today, his family has had to make a very hard decision, and they agreed to accept the largest settlement of a police shooting case in Wisconsin's history, $3.35 million. It's $1 million more than anyone has ever paid in the state of Wisconsin to resolve a police shooting case. So I want to say something about that settlement figure. That settlement figure does nothing for the Robinson family to fill their void from losing Tony. What that figure does do is it gives them vindication. The city would not have dared to pay that sum of money if they didn't know that they were going to lose the trial. That figure is vindication because ultimately in a few days we were going to go to trial. And they were going to present their evidence and we were going to present our evidence. And a jury was going to get to render a verdict about which side was right. And the city decided it did not want a jury to render that verdict, and it would be willing to pay more money than anybody has ever paid to have the case go away. And so this is absolutely vindication for the Robinson family. And what we want to do now is we want to start a process. A jury's not going to get to render a verdict about what happened. They're not going to get to see that evidence, but the community still can. And we want to give the community a chance to still render a verdict in this case. And the only way they can do that is if they see the evidence and they see what really happened. And they see that Officer Kenny's story is a lie, and what the City of Madison Police Department has peddled for 2 years is a lie. And so that's what we're going to do now. We want to start that process today. We're going to do it over the coming weeks. But we are going to start to show what some of that evidence was that the jury would have seen at trial. We're going to let the community see that information. And we're going to let the community ultimately weigh in about whether they want to see something done. There's still an opportunity to say, maybe the Madison needs to have a much better internal investigation process. How did they miss the truth? And maybe they want to say, we don't want Officer Kenny on the streets. So today we're going to start that process, and my colleague Dave is going to do that now.
Hi, I'm David B. Owens, and I just think it's an important step for us to take, as Anand mentioned. We believe in truth, and we believe in facts, and that's what we were prepared to present at trial. And there are two things that I want to just address briefly about why we are where we are and why the City of Madison had such a tough time heading into a trial. And the basic facts, what Officer Kenny contended from day one and for day forever, is that he started the shooting at the top of this stairwell. He says, I started shooting him because I got punched at the top of the stairwell. So this is an image, and you'll see this, it's not the best quality. This is Matt Kenny's foot coming out of the back of the stairwell while he's shooting the second shot. So you have to know there were 7 shots, and the family doesn't like hearing this. I don't like saying it, but the truth has to come out. There were 7, and it was bam, 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 bam. That's the cadence. And during the first bam, bam, there's back to back. This is him coming out of the bottom of the stairwell. And that means he was never at the top of the stairwell when he started shooting. These are the facts. This is just true. There's another thing, and again, this is hard to hear, but it's just true. It's undisputed. We didn't pick the autopsy. We didn't do the autopsy. The medical examiner looked at what happened, And 3 out of the 7 shots were from distance. That means they're more than 3 or 4 feet away. And so what that means is it cannot have been the case that he was on top of him, over him, beating him down like Kenny maintained. So now we've got 2 things. He was at the bottom of the stairwell the whole time. And he was 3 to 4 feet away, at least, maybe more, for 3 of the 7 shots. And the thing is, no one cared about that. No one said, well, oh my gosh, there's a glaring falsehood here in what you've said. So what are we going to do to resolve that? What has to change here? There's been no scrutiny. And so it's important for, I think, the community to begin to understand, and for why we are where we are, why we are on the eve of trial, and why the city of Madison agreed to do this is because there are facts and they matter. They tried to take a last-minute appeal last week. The federal judge certified it as frivolous. That's something that didn't happen in the Heenan case. That's something that didn't happen before. That's not something that happens in Wisconsin very often. And the reason is because we have evidence. So the only reason I'm saying this is because it's not like I take my word for it. You don't know me, you don't have to trust me. I'm just telling you what the facts are. And you can use your eyes, and we're going to continue to show those in the coming weeks. And so that's why we are where we are. So if there were ever an idea or a notion that this wasn't somehow about the facts of the case are that this dude lied, and nobody ever called him out on it. And that's why we're here, because he needs to be called out. And we're going to continue to be here. This doesn't go away, because nothing ever can bring Tony Robinson Jr. back. And so we're going to tell this story, and we're going to tell the truth until everybody has had a chance to judge it, because unfortunately folks have been told and sometimes believed a lie.
Andrea, do you want to say some words? Okay. So, one of the things we want to do, I'm going to give it to Andrea now. The community has not had a chance to know anything about who the real Tony Robinson is, because they peddled this lie for 2 years, and we want to clear that space. Once the lie goes away, then there can be space for who the real Tony Robinson Jr. Terrell was. And please go ahead.
I've already seen some of the things that have been said this morning. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to be awake to make sure that things were said in the right way. I just want people to understand that we have children. We have 2 teenage boys and a young daughter that don't deserve to be watching and reading things that are said in this disgusting manner. At the end of the day, whatever you believe about my son, he was a human being, and he was my son, and he was Tony's son, and he was a brother and a nephew and a grandson. And whatever you think about him, we are still here. And if you don't care anything about us, my children don't deserve to have to hear the horrible things that are said. You can believe what you want. Believe it. We don't care. I didn't care anything about money. We wanted to go to trial, but we're not going to put our kids through things that don't have to go. They don't need to go through. And my son deserves some form of peace. He's gone, and we don't need to hear how much of a disgusting human being you guys think he is, and it's not fair. We have children that need to be left alone, and that's all we ask. Your opinion is yours, and you're entitled to it, but before you speak and put things out into the world to be seen, please remember that there are innocent people that don't deserve this. And I hope that when you go and look into everything, you go in with an open mind to be able to read and actually dig and do the research yourself, because there's a lot more than what you're being told. Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else want to say? All right. This is a hard day, and I think we want to wrap up by saying something about moving forward, because we wanted to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what really happened here, and start to talk about what the truth really is, and we wanted to have the family have a chance to talk about Tony, and have a chance to reflect their feelings on what is a really hard day. But there's something else I want to do. We also want to talk about moving forward. I grew up in Madison. I'm born and raised in Madison. We care about this community, and so we want to talk about how to move forward in Madison. And so one of the things that needs to happen now is that there needs to be I think the first thing we have to do is we have to pay some acknowledgement. Okay, the city of Madison ultimately did the right thing here. A family was going to have to sit through a trial for a week and hear and essentially go through the trauma of reliving the details of their son's death. And so the city did the right thing by resolving the case, and they deserve some credit for that. And importantly, the city changed its policies very recently in terms of backup. It is now the case that they've written into their policy for the first time that officers must wait for backup except in the rarest of circumstances. And that's a policy change that comes too late for Tony Robinson, tragically. But hopefully part of Tony's legacy will be that some other lives will be saved because of that policy change. And the city deserves some credit for having made that policy change. But here's the problem that remains. There is a truth, and the internal investigation process of the city of Madison absolutely failed the Tony Robinson family, and it absolutely failed the citizens of Madison. And that process needs to be fixed and it needs to be changed, and that's one of the things that needs to happen going forward. And the way I can explain that failure in the fewest words possible is that Officer Kenny's story was demonstrably false from the first time you see the audio and video. And yet, Officer Kenny was asked 0 questions by the Madison Police Department's internal investigators. He wasn't asked 1 question to scrutinize his story, despite the fact that it was plain. Your eyes and ears could see that his story was false from the very beginning, even before you get into all the science. So that's a broken investigative process, and it needs to be fixed. And so if we're talking about ways to move forward, that's one of the ways I think a community can demand that we move forward in this great city.
As a final note, to address the giant elephant sitting here in front of us, is there's things for the city of Madison to do, and there are things for us to do as a nation in terms of addressing issues like this. There are a lot of great things about the city of Madison, and there are a lot of great things about this wonderful place. But when we don't expose injustice or problems, then that hurts all of us. That makes us all less safe. You know, I don't hate every police officer. That might surprise some people. You know, I don't have a problem with thinking that police officers shouldn't be attacked when they're doing their job. The problem I have is when they do something that is wrong, that steps over the line and kills somebody who's unarmed. The people who are supposed to protect us start harming us, and you say, you know what, I'm not even going to ask a question about the big lie that you've told me. That is why people say, our lives don't, what is this lives that matter thing? The lives that matter thing is that it's about equality and the dignity of knowing that your casualty, the harm that has happened to you, whether it was your sister, whether it was your brother, whoever it was, that they matter. You know, if this happened on State Street, in front of State Street Brats, and it was some kid from college, you know, some freshman, people would be freaking out. Everyone would be upset. Oh my God. People are, you know, things happen there all the time because we know that that person didn't have to die. And then when somebody tells a lie about it and no one really cares, that's the thing that makes me think, oh man, I could die today. I'm 2 decisions away from being Tony Robinson. You know, I was 19, I went to college, I did all of those things. And so there's a fake narrative between Black Lives Matter, between All Lives Matter, between Back the Badge and Blue Lives Matter. Great, protect us cops, don't kill me. If I'm in trouble and my friend says, come help me, don't kill me. That's it. That's really it. And then if that happened, if somebody made a mistake and killed me, please call them out. You know, if they lie about it and they just do it again and again and say something that is demonstrably false, like I did this thing in this stairwell, and you see it on your don't let your eyes deceive you. And that is the thing that we want to say. There's a false dichotomy between the police and the Black community and oppressed communities who are victimized by police. We want to trust you. It's our goal to trust you, but you've broken the trust. And when everybody else gets behind somebody who's told a lie and they say reflexively, like they did this morning, they're all pissed. Oh my God, how could you settle a lawsuit against this kid? You know, they've been told a lie and they will back it. And all we want is truth. And if you accept the truth, you know, that is how you fix communities. That is why we just want you to understand our suffering. That's all. And if you can do that a little bit, then we can take a step closer together. And as Anand said, we are going to continue to show the community the truth here. Because hopefully at the end of the day, though it will be painful and it will be unfun like this moment is, that can hopefully bring us together and help us move forward. If there are questions, we'll take some.
Was there any concern that not going to trial might deprive some of your evidence and what was going to come out of some of its credibility?
Absolutely. So that is the reason we're here, and that is the reason we will be back, is because we think that matters. And we intend to, we're still figuring out what to do, but we want the community to understand that and see the truth and that is a big cost, is because everybody wants their day in court, and it matters. But at the same time, they're counterweighing things, and we will be presenting that evidence to the community.
So if the MPD internal review process is flawed, is the DOJ external review process also flawed?
Well, let's just make sure that people understand how that worked. The DOJ's investigation is in support of a process in which the district attorney is making a decision about whether a crime was committed and whether he can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? That's a very different standard and a very different obligation than the one that the Madison Police Department has about assessing an officer's conduct, whether it was in accordance with standards, whether it was in accordance with training, whether it was in accordance with policies. And so the Madison Police Department does not absolve itself of its obligations to conduct a meaningful internal investigation just because somebody else did an investigation for a very different purpose. And here's really the way in which the DCI, Department of Justice investigation matters. They conducted their investigation, and the district attorney said, I'm not pressing charges, but I can see that those first shots were fired from the base of the stairs by Officer Kenny. Yet Officer Kenny is saying they were fired at the top of the stairs while Tony Robinson is punching him. So the district attorney himself said, I may not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime was committed, but I am telling you that story does not make any sense. And the Madison Police Department then goes and conducts its internal investigation and asks 0 questions.
I think it's clear what you're saying about the Madison internal investigation, though. I think from a broader statewide perspective, we'd like to hear you weigh in on whether or not you feel the statewide process is lacking. I understand it's for a very different thing, but that thing is a very important thing. How good a job do you think it did?
Well, ultimately, the determination really has to come from district attorneys, individual district attorneys, and they make decisions.
So, and that's right. So there was another investigation that was done fairly recently in Milwaukee by the same investigators here, DCI, and they're guided by the district attorney. And I'm not trying to throw out Ozane here, but it's really he's the one running the ship in terms of the way that investigation goes. And in this case, he did have the opportunity to do some follow-up. He did a little bit of follow-up, and the district attorney in Milwaukee reached a different decision in a different case. And so I do think the Bell family, all of their pain and hard work that they did to have this idea that there would be no conflicts of interest in terms of that investigation is important work, but it still requires that work isn't it's not like you can just bring in DCI and then it's over, now everything is fine. It still requires district attorneys asking tough questions and saying, well, I've got to resolve this fact here, I acknowledge this, what are you going to do afterwards? And I do think at the end of the day it is exceptionally hard to charge an officer with any crime. We know that. Look, we all saw with our own eyes what happened with Walter Scott, and still there. So there are some decisions that have to be made from a prosecutorial standpoint that I don't have to make, and the others have to make, that are totally different. And that's why it's sort of not to punt on your question, but that's why
because I'm not here. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm not hearing an answer to the question. Do you think DCI did a good job or not?
Yeah, I think that DCI did a thorough job. They did what was asked of them, and my point is that if the district attorney wanted to get to the bottom of some of these questions, he could have asked more.
Let me say one other thing about that.
Sure.
The DCI process, at least in this case, was one in which the officer was given an opportunity to walk through the scene where the shooting happened, and then review all of the audio and video evidence before he was asked a single question about what happened. And I think people in Madison and people around the state of Wisconsin may question whether that's the right way to do internal investigation, or the right way to do investigations, internal or criminal.
Is that standard
That is
for the DCI process? Have you learned as to whether that approach has been used in other officer-involved shootings in Wisconsin?
what we have learned is that that is a perfectly acceptable way of doing it under DCI's policies and practices. That is, they are allowed to do it that way and allow the officers to see that evidence. The DCI investigators have admitted that they would not normally do that with any suspect in any other case, but that is something that they do uniquely in these officer-involved shooting cases. But I'll let my colleague David speak to whether, because he knows more about what has happened in specific other cases.
You know, the line, and what Anand said is perfectly right. It's a case-by-case determination, and that determination is made by the district attorney. And so, yes, officers are often, routinely given an opportunity to see the evidence. And you might think, oh, wouldn't that give you an opportunity to, try to tell a story about what happened? And in fact, you know what? All right. This is what we think happened. I might be totally wrong, but this is what we think happened here, is that Officer Kenny, he got the opportunity to see the audio, to listen to the audio and watch the video, but they weren't synced up. They weren't together at the same time. So he sat there and he came up with a story that he thought fit them. And then sometime later, during DCI's good investigation, they said, well, we want a real-time version of what happened, so let's put the audio and the video together. Now, Officer Kenny didn't have his microphone on, against department policy. Madison didn't say anything about that. Put that to the side. So they put it together, and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh my God, when I see those in real time, when I see the truth, that makes my story impossible. And so we actually think that process, the walkthrough, the seeing the evidence, actually corrupted the process here. And you could see it doing that. Now, there may be other times in which, a district attorney might say, look, you've told me after engaging with the suspect, like, say, hey, you've told me this, you've told me this, you told me this happened. Well, now let's watch the video together. That doesn't jive with what you're saying. That happens in interrogations and in homicide cases all the time. They didn't do that here, so it is case by case. But that process here is part of why the false narrative was allowed to continue.
David, is there a window now for the feds maybe to come in and do their own investigation?
I sent them a letter the last time I was here on August 12th. I sent them a letter before that, and I'm going to send them another one.
Were you requesting that they investigate?
Yes, we requested that, and I will be straightforward. I'm going to ask the district attorney here to re-examine the case. We're going to give him all of the evidence that we learned through the discovery here, and maybe and implore him to reevaluate the situation.
Did he not have access to the material that you say you're now going to show him?
Some of the stuff was there, and then some of the stuff we've during the discovery in the civil case went to another level, and bringing in additional forensic scientists to talk about it, and bringing in additional scene reconstruction people. So that stuff wasn't done previously, and it hadn't been created yet.
Let me say one other thing about that. Not only will we ask the district attorney to re-examine this case, but we will ask the Madison Police Department to conduct the internal investigation that it never conducted. Now do it. Now you have all of the evidence. You decided to pay $3.35 million to resolve this case. Clearly you knew you had a problem. Now do the investigation that you never did. Because Officer Kenny is still Officer Kenny. He has the ability to go back out on the street, and I think the citizens of Madison ought to have an opportunity to say, I don't want that. If you're willing to pay that much money to make this case go away because you know your officer is telling a lie, then why are you standing there reflexively defending him still? I mean, what the statements that were put out by Officer Cobalt this morning are a real problem. The idea that they're saying I paid this much money and it was just a business decision is nonsense. That this was a decision made exclusively by an insurance company who's assessing risk is nonsense. Okay? But let's say it's not nonsense for a second. Let's say that an insurance company really made the decision, and it's nonsense. Insurance companies are in the business of assessing risk. They're professionals at assessing risk, and they're saying a really big risk is that we're going to lose and have to pay a whole lot of money and have a jury render a verdict against us. If professional risk assessors are saying you're going to lose, then they're telling you that you have a problem. So listen to your professional risk assessors then, if that's what you're doing. And listen to them tell you that, boy, I think your cop lied and I think you're going to lose at trial. I think the jury's going to render a verdict against you, Officer Kenny, Madison Police Department. And if that's the case, listen to what they say and go do the internal investigation that you failed to do the first time.
Officer Kenny's... Go ahead.
Is it okay? A judge found that the city was not systematically, they didn't do anything systematically wrong, and the proceeding would have only been against Officer Kenny. Why are you guys still upset with the city?
Great question.
I like that
well, so this is about standards of proof, and the judge found we didn't develop enough evidence in our particular case to say that the city of Madison's internal policy caused this to happen. And under I don't want to get technical about the law, but it's a very high standard to meet to say that there was this custom unwritten practice thing, and those claims are hard to meet. But at the same time, we don't have to deny what we know, and that is that the city is deeply involved and they're deeply invested in this case and defending this officer. And just the fact of the way in which you have the police chief this morning defending this officer and refusing to say, oh man, you've said something that doesn't even, even asking the question. That's why we're still here. And the other reason, and I think that this gets to the heart of this, is because we care. We don't want other people to die, and there's a real fear and risk of that if these types of things are allowed to continue. That will continue. That happens.
Just
final.
Did the city attorneys come to you with the?
We can't talk about the sort of the way that settlement discussions went.
Officer Kinney's attorney said they had documented that he sustained a concussion and that they gave evidence of that to the district attorney. Do you guys, in your lawsuit, do you dispute that?
Yeah, we completely do.
Could you go over that, please?
I could go over, sure. So, Officer Kenny's whole thing was that I got attacked at the top of the stairs, and he had a problem with that, obviously, because he started shooting him at the bottom of the stairs. But there was a whole range of things, and I don't want to put Officer Kenny's sort of medical treatment out there because that's confidential. But we did dispute that because 3 days after the shooting or 4 days after the shooting, he was out riding horses. And engaging in risky behavior. And so if there was a concussion, which we dispute, but I can't go into that, there's a whole bunch of inconsistent behavior with having that. Last question, please.
In your opinion, do you believe officers other than Matt Penny lied?
Not in this case. No, this is not like a Laquan McDonald situation where there are other officers who generated a bunch of false reports. And that is why, at the end of the day, there's so much opportunity and good here, is because all of the officers who we deposed and asked questions of, they told the truth about what they saw and what happened. They didn't cover up, but instead, when an officer told a lie himself, he wasn't called out about it. So the problem isn't as bad as Chicago, forget that place. But there's still a problem at the end. So thank you all for coming.
Could I ask you just one more?
Final.
So you've obviously operated in different states, right, that don't have this statewide review process that we do in Wisconsin. Could you just make a broader comment about, is this something that you think other states should adopt? Do you think this was helpful to you in your case?
That's a big question. I'm hesitating. I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say this. The answer is yes. This is a better process than the one that exists when police departments investigate their own officers. But it's not a perfect process. It could be better for some of the reasons we talked about a little bit earlier. And it's not a process that absolves a police department of its responsibility to conduct its own internal investigation as well.
All right, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time. And this is not, no one is happy, no one is excited. And it's just really important to remember that Tony Robinson Jr. is a person. He was, and that's why we're here. So thank you for coming.
Vindication because there's 335 reasons why you need to look at this. That's what's vindication. No, it's not. There's no honor in a lie. There's none. I've been saying that for 2 years. I've been asking Mike Koval to look for 2 years, knowing they didn't, and been stonewalled. I never asked him about the evidence. I just asked him, is this vindication? Vindication comes when justice, the way that we know it to be, exists.
Were you hopeful this would go to trial so that it would receive all the attention it would have received and people would have seen this evidence and the two sides presented? Is that what you had hoped for originally?
I had hoped for that, but then you don't understand what it's doing to my family. You have no idea what it's doing to my family. And if I had to choose my family over going to trial, I'm choosing my family because I can and will bring all of the evidence out. I've asked people to look for 2 years. I'm going to show you now. And I will be standing in the streets and everybody know, here's the truth. Look here, look here. I can tell you now where to look. Because I looked for 8 months and I found the lies. And yeah, okay, I'm a raging lunatic, but at least I raged the truth. And I'm not raging against you because you're lying. That's me. And I'm going to keep on talking about the truth because it's important for me. This is who we are as a citizen, as a people of the United States, not a system and not a government. How you and I are. And honor is important. And when you lie, there is no honor, no justification. And he lied. And I'm just going to keep standing on that. I'm not letting this go. I'm hoping the city chooses to fire him. If he doesn't, I'm sure my family will go to the PFC. I'm hoping the city picks up this and indicts him. And if they don't, I'm going to find a judge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.